Unserious. And I mentioned trolling because that's the political term of art of trying to get people to be so upset over this that they miss that, yada, yada, yada. But I want us to understand what it means when this is happening from the top diplomat in the United States, a very powerful position, Secretary of State, which Marco Rubio got because he was willing to publicly disavow everything he's ever said about Donald Trump and foreign policy, to eat his own words, because he warned about exactly the thing that he is now doing. He warned about the con, about taking advantage of people.
Stop barking.
About just using a showmanship and as Rubio put it, a con man's pack of lies to betray what America is and should be. So LOL, Marco Rubio, let's remember what you used to warn us about.
What we are dealing with here, my friends, is a con artist.
He's taking advantage of Americans who are hurting.
If he builds the wall the way he built Trump Towers, he'll be using illegal immigrant labor to do it.
Yep. So these are the people doing the thing. Sometimes it's complicated. As I said, some cases are nuanced, and sometimes we can't tell you exactly what's in someone's mind or heart. Other times we can show you exactly. And elected officials, they said they believed in it mattered to them and why they warned against Donald Trump and this kind of leadership that they are now carrying out, which is telling. Now, this current court clash is not just about how you feel about deportations. It's about the apparent defiance of a court order and that mocking arrogance afterward. This morning, federal authorities announced the deportation of a Lebanese doctor who's a professor at the prestigious Brown University They say it's justified because they found what they called sympathetic photos towards terrorism on the phone there. That move would seem to also flatly violate what was a standing order that that individual not be deported without advance notice. Airport officials now claim they just didn't receive a formal order and they just deported them. Together you have several different moves that flatly violate these orders, best we can tell, reporting to you what the White House has said, sometimes offering loopholes and sometimes offering laughing emojis. So, top officials admit this in spirit, if not in court. They laugh off this type of defiance. And so coming up, I will tell you, we have legal experts on this. But before that, I also want to mention the underlying immigration policy, because Trump is failing to hit the big numbers on mass deportations that he's promised. We've reported this on this show previous to this clash. He is lagging far behind Biden's numbers. Let's take a look at the chart. If we have the last full month, Trump came up short of Biden's number. So you could call that roughly a tie. You could call him slightly behind. Apples to apples, a month of February deportations. That is the context for part of the extreme effort and messaging. Indeed, ICE and border veterans have discussed this early record openly, that they're not exactly beating Biden. You're saying if you want to really up the numbers in a concrete way over the years, you'd have to go to Congress and get new funding, basically a new funding law to do it. Why do you think President Trump hasn't done that or talked about that yet?
Well, I don't want to speak for the administration why they haven't. I'd be railing about this instantly because we've been saying we needed more beds, we need more funding.
I think he's doing exactly what he said he was going to do on the campaign this past cycle. I think the deportations are key in making sure that they are targeting the worst criminals first.
When you say prioritization of the worst, does that mean fewer overall deportations? Because one interesting thing, and we're just following the numbers with you here, is if you look at the comparison, I'll put this on the screen, Trump versus Biden, right now, it's actually a lower rate of deportations.
This is the most aggressive action any president has ever taken to secure our southern border. We're also re-implementing, under President Trump's direction and leadership, Remain in Mexico. We're re-implementing Safe Third agreements, ending catch and release. And of course, we are unleashing ICE to perform its mission all across the interior of the United States.
That's some of the discourse and the facts. The administration reportedly frustrated with their slow numbers, according to the New York Times. So as Trump appears to push a strategy of defying these court orders, he's not making that move from a position of policy strength. He's making it from a position of policy weakness and concern about not even hitting the Biden numbers. And then you have the PR videos trying to show the impact. You have a lot of efforts to say this is a big deal. The numbers are not big. This is significant for all the number of reasons and reporting and facts I just showed you tonight, but I want to be clear, now that you look at the context, they want this to play as a big deal for 200 people. They're actually still trailing the overall numbers and far from the mass deportations they vowed. A lot of that is law and policy. As for the politics, which also matters if you're talking about what you can get out of Congress, top group of Democrats protesting this and echoing what the judge said, that we are not at war, immigrants are not invading the country, and it is courts that determine whether people have broken the law. So you take it all together there and you have a lot. I mentioned the faltering on mass deportation because so much in the Trump era, you probably know this by now, right? We all kind of know it, always involves this sort of other PR reverse spin. It's almost like the main thing is never the only thing because there is such an obsession, a fixation with the PR and the message above the substance that you're going to hear a lot more about that because they want you to. And yet it's a trap if you say, well, we're not going to discuss it just because they want it, yada, yada, yada. And we can have whole journalism conferences about how to objectively, responsibly cover this stuff. But you got to keep both of these things in mind. from a position of weakness, they're faltering on their own mass deportation vows, and they don't have some big bill in Congress or some other big plan to do what that former ICE director said in the interview I just excerpted, that you got to get money from Congress to build a lot of beds if you want to do this in a massive scale. Meanwhile, they got Elon Musk and other people cutting everything left and right with no organization. Then you have this wider autocratic question. Are they deliberately and repeatedly violating court orders on this issue where they want the attention? They don't want necessarily a full scandal, but they want people to think they're going hard at the issue, because the long-term plan is to see how much they can get away with violating courts, because they don't want to be in a democracy governed by the rule of law. That's a big way to start the week. It's a big question, and we have our experts when we're back in 90 seconds.
Dry eyes still feel gritty, rough, or tired? With MyBo, eyes can feel MyBo is the only prescription dry eye drop that forms a protective layer for the #1 cause of dry eye, too much tear evaporation. For relief.
That guy's hat?
We're gonna let that guy keep his hat, but want some more broccoli?
No thanks, I'm good.
We're back with former federal prosecutor John Flannery. Good evening. We went through it a lot because I wanted to make sure people have an understanding of both the serious threats posed by the judicial clash and the facts of it, because I want to note that the government is still claiming to some degree at some of the time that they're not trying to violate these orders. The facts suggest a much murkier case. And the other policy fact that they're not winning on the mass deportations they've vowed, because there hasn't been a serious national approach to doing and funding that, which even the ICE veteran told us on this program, and that's background context. So starting with the court clash, what do you see there, John?
What I see is a government under Trump that will say anything or do anything to achieve an objective. I thought you were kind in a way when you said they you didn't say appreciate or understand, but they don't appreciate the consequences of what they're doing. Improvised in response to the court's order to get to where they wanted to get. When we have among these people named in that case as defendants the Attorney General of the United States and the Secretary of State, and they stand by and they're part of this, I think the judge is going to have a very powerful order tomorrow. I don't know if he'll be taking them one by one or whatever. But as you said, when you have an order saying don't do something, and the judge says it in court, often that's the only thing that's said. And an order travels after that in days afterwards. But the short order that the judge sent in writing, in print, was as clear as could be. And they just decided by their calendar to hide this thing and do it under the darkness of night. And then when they were caught on their principles, that is to say that the Alien Enemies Act, which requires a war, like it was used in 1812, World War I, World War II, and that the predatory incursions, which the administration has mentioned, has to be by a foreign government. What is that foreign government? Is it Venezuela? I don't think so. So what I see here is another extension of the government ignoring the law, clearly said for certain purposes, bringing into this maw people who we know some are absolutely innocent. We've already heard the stories. You know, one is a doctor, another person's a 23-year-old who was taken in because he had a tattoo, and the tattoo was of his mother, and they take it as a gang tattoo. We can't fix the stupid agents. We can't fix the corrupt government. And the people who suffer are those who are being tortured in Venezuela. The pictures all have the officers shaving their heads, putting on white t-shirts and white shorts, and they're wearing masks as they do it. They cannot stand to show the face to us for the crimes they're committing. And what are those crimes? If there is no authority.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in and say, I think you make a very fair point about how much of this is being done under sometimes the literal cover of darkness, the press strategy of the weekend, the other officials hiding. As I mentioned, there's a question of whether folks in this country or other countries are at all worried about long-term accountability or not. You mentioned whether any of the agents are making these mistakes. You know, you're our guest, so you put it the way you put it. I put it differently. I would say The whole reason you have due process is that human error can occur. So, sure, misread a tattoo. Sometimes it's even more aggressive than that. But that's why we need due process. I put the founders up on that. Before I lose you, John, I want to show how deep this tradition goes. Folks are accustomed to seeing the New York Post back Donald Trump up on just about everything. It's a Rupert Murdoch paper. Here they are today saying in their sort of tabloid way, sorry Elon Musk, sorry Trump, but deporting illegal gangbangers must heed the rule of law. And as with all things in our current era, there's a question of who's paying attention, John, but I wonder whether if this story comes out factually and people understand the truth of it, do true conservatives, libertarians, and others, the people you and I used to have good faith debates about in law school, say, well, no, of course you can't have wartime powers and peace deployed against everyone, because anyone who's read a page of any history book and also what the founders warned about is, then we'll all be living under wartime autocratic powers, because if that's allowed, it's easier for the government to run that way if it's not concerned with human rights.
A couple of days ago, I ran into a woman who was from Ukraine, and she was upset with Trump, and in her beautiful accent, she described her life in Russia and in Ukraine. And she says, you have no idea what it's like to feel like you're always in a jail. You walk around and you're compressed and impressed by this government to do only what you're allowed to do by this government. So if we allow the migrants that we welcome to our shores to be punished this way, if we make legal kidnapping, basically, and torture as an acceptable instrument of our government, we've lost our moral function, we've lost our way, and we're no longer the land of the free. You know, we're just not what we promised to be by our Constitution and by our advances over the years. So we have work to do, and it's time to fight for those things that we claim to be the hallmarks of a great nation.
Understood, and that's why you are a leadoff expert on this. Counselor John Flannery, our thanks to you. There's a whole other piece of this we haven't hit yet, and I want to tell viewers Maya Wiley is standing by. One of those nights, we're going to keep rolling on. We're going to live through this together. The court hearing on one of those cases I mentioned just wrapped up in the last hour, and we have a new piece of this I want to get into with Maya Wiley next.
For people who feel limited by the unpredictability of generalized myasthenia gravis, season to season, Ultomirus is continuous symptom control with improvement in activities of daily living and reduced muscle weakness. And Ultomirus is the only long-acting GMG treatment with a free of just 6 to 7 infusions per year for a predictable routine I can count on.
Ultomirus may lower your immune system's ability to fight infections, increasing your chance of serious meningococcal and other infections that may become life-threatening. Complete or update meningococcal vaccines at least 2 weeks before you start. If treatment is urgent and you're not vaccinated, you should receive antibiotics with your vaccines. Don't start if you have a meningococcal infection. Infusion reactions may include back, belly, limb or chest pain, muscle spasms, blood pressure changes, numbness, shaking chills, bad taste, breathing problems, or face trauma, throat swelling. Ultomirus is continuous symptom control. Ask your neurologist about starting Ultomirus.
Before preventing migraine with Qulipta, it was hard keeping plans.
And look at me now.
You'll never truly forget migraine, but Qulipta reduces attacks, making more zero migraine days possible.
Don't take it if allergic to Qulipta. Get help right away for serious allergic reactions like trouble breathing, face limp, or tongue swelling, itching, or rash, which may occur when taking Qulipta or days after. Common side effects include nausea, constipation, and sleepiness.
Learn how Abby can help you save
Qulipta. The forget.
It's like they're ignoring my order because there were still funds that were not flowing. Now, in that instance, the administration said, but we're fine. We're not doing anything intentionally. In other words, they felt the need to say to the court, no, we are paying attention to what you're ordering us to do. I actually put out a piece on Substack right after that saying, look, there's a playbook here for authoritarian regimes. What you have to pay attention is to what they say, because very quickly, Elon Musk, for instance, called a court-ordered a judge who issued a stay on health data up on a website evil and who should be fired. We had J.D. Vance saying the same thing about, similar thing about judges who were paying attention to the rule of law, that somehow they were dangerous and doing bad things to the president, trying to take his power, to where we came this weekend. And this rhetoric, which is heightened, it's more dangerous, more serious. That last clip you just played, how do we know they're gangbangers? All we have is a regime's assertions about people who didn't get the chance to say whether or not they were right. Remember, we just saw Jency Machado, a U.S. citizen who voted for Donald Trump in Virginia, pulled over and detained because they were wrong about whether he was an undocumented immigrant. We have a long history of actually ICE making mistakes and detaining U.S. citizens, other people here wrongly identified, and violating their rights. You're hearing they did something similar in Chicago. But last week, I mean, the reason we have due process rights from exactly to what you're saying, Ari, is because we're supposed to protect people's rights. But we have a history of violating.
Easter. Jethro, back. Come on.
about what might be happening here.
You mentioned J.D. Vance. Let's take a listen to that from the archive.
The Constitution also says the president must abide by legitimate Supreme Court rulings, doesn't it?
The Constitution says that the Supreme Court can make rulings, but if the Supreme Court, and look, I hope that they would not do this, but if the Supreme Court said the President of the United States can't fire a general, that would be an illegitimate ruling.
You mentioned that, and he's a lawyer. He's making a legally false claim. There's no such thing as the politician picking and choosing what an illegitimate ruling is when they lose. And I think viewers of this program know we hew very closely to the evidence. We don't think a lot of extra observation and opinion gets you very far. But the evidence is an administration that did win an election. But after lying about the last one and using a bunch of tactics that ultimately ended in violence to overthrow it. So having them now back in power and talking this way, how concerning is that?
Very, very concerning. Remember, we're also talking about an administration that took extremists, including white supremacists and other kinds of extremists, and said when they violate the law, they'll get pardoned. But we're now going to decide that we can do anything we want to go after anyone we want if we decide we don't want. That's essentially undergirding the premise of this argument. We'll decide. This law they used from 1789 is one that 5 Supreme Court justices of this current Supreme Court said was essentially overruled by history. This is the same precedent they're using and stretching well out of proportion that interred Japanese people and interred them in what even Justice Roberts called concentration camp-like conditions. This is the law that they're using to say that all these people, these 300 people who got sent to El Salvador, who apparently are not even from El Salvador, and whom we don't know whether or not they were actually engaged in crimes, are now potentially being abused in prisons there.
Yeah, you really lay it all out, and then what we mentioned in our discussion with your colleague and Councilor John Flannery earlier is if a government is allowed to operate on wartime powers at all time without war, then they're not wartime powers. You're just on an Orwellian or autocratic footing. And so when they say out loud they don't care what the judges think, and they'll pick and choose which rules to follow based on what they already agree with, we're there, and we need to report that and face it. So Maya, I appreciate your candor as always. I want to remind viewers, Maya mentioned her newsletter. You can Google Maya Wiley newsletter Substack to find that. You can also go wherever books are sold to get her memoir, Remember, You Are a Wiley. That's our recommended reading. Still ahead, we're seeing a different type of activism that's going after Trump politically and Musk in corporate America at his Tesla dealerships as the stock crashes. We have a very special guest on that coming up.
Sometimes my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis gets in my way. But thanks to Skyrizi, I'm free to bare my skin.
With Tax Relief, America's most trusted tax relief firm. Their award-winning team of tax professionals have resolved over 1 billion actions. Make sure you're getting the best.
578365. Optima Tax Relief.
I'm recent CEO of Hope.
At homeserve.com.
My constituents really want.
Not on our watch! Not on our watch!
It's interesting when you say, why do you protest? There are so many things. It's hard to choose one.
A new and assertive style of protest taking the concern over the Trump-Musk cuts to Tesla dealerships. Interesting developments. We have a special guest as we peel back the layers on this. We actually heard from some of the protesters themselves last week. Now we go to the global editorial director, Katie Drummond, for Wired, which has reported on Musk, his so-called efficiency efforts, and has a long record of thoughtful journalism in the tech business space and beyond. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
What do you think of this effort to do specific corporate protests and go to the Tesla dealerships?
Well, look, I mean, what we're seeing so far is that these efforts are very widespread. I mean, this is not sort of one isolated protest at one Tesla dealership on a given weekend. I mean, these are protests that are happening as we're seeing not across the United States, but actually internationally as well. We're seeing them across Europe. So there is this very concerted, widespread, sort of grassroots effort to, hit Elon Musk where it hurts. This company, Tesla in particular, has been described as his baby. I mean, this is a company that is very near and dear to his heart. In the last 8 weeks alone, as Tesla's stock has plummeted, in part, reporting shows, because of these protests, he has lost something like $100 billion on paper. So this is, a widespread effort to essentially, tank the value of this company.
Is this something he did not foresee?
It's hard to know from everything that we've seen in our reporting. I certainly think that everything we've seen from Musk is that he tends to operate sort of outside the bounds of law and sometimes sort of outside the bounds of, facts and reason. So there's no reason to think that he had any idea that this was coming. I think from everything we've seen, from his own comments about Doge and sort of what that group is doing inside the federal government, the story he tells himself is that he is one of the good guys, that the work that he is doing to, untangle fraud and waste and abuse inside the federal government is a good thing. So I would imagine that if you think you are doing the right thing by the American people, sure, you would be surprised to find out that thousands of them are actually trying to tank the stock of your company and take your wealth down with it.
Yeah, I mean, he also thinks that it's about amassing power for himself. I mean, we saw he made many claims about buying Twitter that were false, and they seem from the chain of events to be knowingly so, because he said he was concerned about bias and turning up and down the volume by viewpoint. That problem has gotten much larger under him as compared to the prior Twitter leadership, which did, I should say, have those debates. But all the studies show it's gotten worse.
Well, absolutely. By any sort of business measure, Musk's acquisition of Twitter was an unmitigated disaster. I mean, it was a slash and burn effort to reduce the size of the workforce, to sort of unleash, open commentary on the platform, which, is rife with abuse and disinformation, toxicity. So, if that's an approach that Musk thinks is a value add for a company, or let's say for the federal government, we are certainly seeing that same phenomenon, that same playbook that he utilized at Twitter, taking shape across these federal agencies that Musk and Doge have been essentially infiltrating in recent weeks.
Yeah. As we follow all these stories, we go well beyond the sort of traditional DC or political folks. And Wired and Katie Drummond, you've been doing a lot of important journalism on this for a long time. So thank you for your expertise.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We'll be right back.
So what are you thinking?
I'm thinking about our honeymoon. What about Africa? Safari, hot air balloon ride, swim with elephants.
Wait, can we afford a safari? Great question. Like everything, it takes a little planning. Or put the money towards a down payment.
On a ranch.
In Montana.
With horses.
Let's take a look at those scenarios.
JP Morgan Wealth Management has advisors in Chase branches.
Not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression.
Anyone? If you go all the way back to Ferris Bueller, like so many of us do, we love that scene. The point is that tariff history is definitely a cautionary tale. Could you have seen this coming?
Heart disease and obesity.
Will help right away if you get a lump or swelling in your neck. Sugar in people with diabetes, especially if you take medicines. Upset, headache, feeling tired, dizzy or bloated.
Okay, remember the deal. 4 lines on Verizon, $25 each.
And iPhone 16 Pro.
We all get one. It's not on us. It is on them.
Going in.
Hi,
Hi, we're here for
the
the
unlimited plan, $25 a line.
Yeah, and
iPhone 16 Pro, one for each of you.
Yeah, but
It's on us. We got you.
right now every family gets our best price, $25 a line and iPhone 16 Pro with Apple Intelligence. Get 4 on us, only on Verizon. That was actually easier than we thought.
There is a lot going on tonight. You've been in these rooms. How are you digesting it? And how do you think the world is digesting what Trump is saying? What are people saying to you in New Jersey about Doge and what they're seeing Musk and his team do here? What are the global politics for some of these leaders, and why do you see them stating the opposite of what the United States president is stating?
We just signed the lease on our 3rd shop. My assistant went to customink.com to get new uniforms with all the locations. He found great products, uploaded new art.
And in just seconds, you can use the free calculator at abacuspays.com to learn what your policy might be.
Raised tariffs.
We can keep tariffs on Cuban sugar high. Well, you can keep them high enough to protect
The tariff bill.
And we're indebted to some great expert guests who walked us through some of these legal clashes and the Musk fallout. There's also the plain old economy, and Americans still dealing with high grocery prices, expensive eggs, people smuggling in less expensive eggs from Mexico. Trump's trade war is certainly not over, and here's a view from pop culture.
The Great Depression passed the anyone? The tariff bill.
You put the tariffs in, you put the tariffs out, you put the tariffs in, and you sing them all about it.
That's a smoke detector.
Right. It's rebranded as a musical instrument.
And of course, you're doing that for what reason?
To avoid the tariffs.
The Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which anyone raised or lowered, raised tariffs.
We can keep tariffs on Cuban sugar high. Well, you can keep them high enough to protect my farmers.
E-scooters have taken off this year. Now they face a 25% tariff.
Okay, I hate to admit this, but if one of the key casualties of this trade war is e-scooters, I actually think I'm fine with that.
Did it work? Anyone? Anyone know the effects? It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression.
Anyone? If you go back to Ferris Bueller like so many of us do, we love that scene. The point is that tariff history is definitely a cautionary tale. Could you have seen this coming? That's our digital question for you. You can find me at Ari Melber across social on any of the platforms you might use. And tell me, could you have seen high tariffs driving a trade war? Let me know, and we'll stay connected online. We'll be right back.
We are people living with AFib. And over 500,000 of us have left blood thinners behind. For life. We've cut our stroke risk and said goodbye to our bleeding worry with the Watchman implant. We may be getting older, but we've never squeezed more out of life. And we are just getting started. Join us at Watchman.com. Watchman, it's one time for a lifetime.
Have you always had trouble with your weight? Me too.
Discover the power of Wegovy.
With Wegovy, I lost 35 pounds. And some lost over 46 pounds.
And I'm keeping the weight off.
Reducing my risk.
Wegovy is the only weight management medicine proven to reduce risk of major cardiovascular events such as death, heart attack, or stroke in adults with known heart disease and obesity.
Don't use Wegovy with semaglutide or GLP-1 medicines or in children under 12. Don't take if you or your family had MTC, MEN2, or if allergic to it. Tell your provider if you plan to have surgery or a procedure, are breastfeeding, pregnant, or plan to be. Stop taking and get medical help right away if you get a lump or swelling in your neck, severe stomach pain, or any of these allergic reactions. Serious side effects may include pancreas inflammation and gallbladder or severe stomach problems. Call your prescriber if you have any of these symptoms. Wegovy may cause low blood sugar in people with diabetes, especially if you take medicines to treat diabetes. Call your prescriber about vision changes, if you feel your heart racing while at rest, or if you have mental changes. Depression or thoughts of suicide may occur. Common side effects include nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation, stomach pain, flu or upset, headache, feeling tired, dizzy or bloated, gas, and heartburn. Some side effects lead to dehydration, which may cause kidney problems.
With Wegovy,
I'm losing weight,
I'm keeping it on.
and I'm lowering my CV risk.
Ask your prescriber about Wegovy.
Okay, remember the deal. 4 lines on Verizon, $25 each. And iPhone 16 Pro.
We all get one. It's not on us. It is on them.
I'm going in.
Hi, we're here for
The
the...
unlimited plan, $25 a line.
Yeah, and
iPhone 16 Pro, one for each of you.
Yeah, but it's
on us. We got you.
right now, every family gets our best.
The Bush administration during the war on terror. So the George W. Bush absolutely was very aggressive in pushing some of the authorities with Guantanamo and military tribunals and other kinds of things. But the courts intervened from time to time. The court struck down military tribunals, and they obeyed that order, and they responded, and they pushed for legislation to create something new called military commissions. That's how the system's supposed to work. Congress, president, and the judges all have a role to play. So this idea that somehow the judges can't tell the executive branch what to do is absolute nonsense in our constitutional system of government.
But George, is the basis from which they are doing everything, because the fundamental belief is the executive branch is unitary, it is almighty, it is the primary authority. You couple that with the images that we saw from the plane. And the fact that, as the Fox host come, oh, isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? It's the theater of this as well that sort of augments the underlying effort to grab the power.
It's
correct?
a big show. And,
As we got images here, the whole drama of this, the music that they had playing, as the score for these arrests.
Yeah, and that's what this is all about. I mean, the whole point is we don't know who these people are. They could be, some of them could be U.S. citizens. Some of them could have been innocently, they were innocent, could be innocent, and they were just rounded up with part of this group. But to go back to your point about the executive branch, even a unitary executive, as conservatives have posited, the executive branch's role, the president's role, is set out specifically in Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution. It says the president shall faithfully execute the laws and the Constitution of the United States in substance. Okay, and it's the judiciary, as Barbara points out, that's in charge with ultimately having the last word on what the law is, which is why, in extreme circumstances, when the president goes off the rails and violates the law, whether or not he meant it in good faith or not, like the Bush administration, they were pushing it a little bit, but they complied. Is the judges can tell you violated the law, and normal administrations obey that.
Right.
And the difference here is you've got an administration that is hell-bent on violating laws. That's why there's so many lawsuits. That's why they've had so many losses, more losses than you've probably ever seen an administration have in just 1 week, because they are throwing out statutes, they are ignoring statutes, they're ignoring provisions of the Constitution, language in the Constitution, like the birthright citizenship issue and the appointments clause. They don't care what the law and the Constitution say. And it's just one more step in the same direction to say that, well, you're a legitimate judge because we disagree with you.
Disagree.
But that's not how our tripartite system of government is supposed to work.
It's the part that I really appreciate that George just put on the table, Barbara, speaks to, our courts being the last word on what the law is, period. That applies to both the executive as well as the legislative branches, which makes the laws, and the president under oath faithfully executes and upholds those laws. But then you have sort of the gray space. And we've sort of entered that today, too, as we saw the president tweet out on Truth Social his claim that the Biden pardons were signed by AutoPen and thus are there void. The pardons that Sleepy Joe gave to the Unselect Committee of Political Bugs and many others, yada, 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 hereby declared void, vacant, and of no further force of effect. So putting it all caps and using $7 words that he doesn't understand doesn't change people saying, well, he's over his skis. Bro didn't even have skis on. There is no slope he can get on to ride this one because of the way this... Explain to us, Barbara, why this is so bat crazy.
You left out a word.
So,
I did. I left out a word.
So there's a statute enacted in 2000 by Congress that says that documents that are signed with online digital devices are valid. And that is what allows all of us to use all of those different devices we use, whether it's a DocuSign or Adobe, various things, and sign for banking, for contracts, for all kinds of things. So these pardons are absolutely valid. I'm sure Donald Trump knows they're absolutely valid. So why raise it? I don't know. I mean, one is to strike fear into the hearts of those who might have received these pardons, to think that maybe they may find themselves in the crosshairs, maybe to create some question and to enable prosecutors to bring charges. But I fully expect that if any of these individuals were charged, the people on the January 6th committee, number one, would have a defense under the speech or debate clause of the Constitution. And number two, they've been granted full pardons, but now that's an affirmative defense they will have to assert if Trump's Department of Justice goes after them. But it's baseless. There's no legal validity for what he says. You can't undo a pardon. And the fact that they were used with a digital device is absolutely irrelevant.
Real quick, George, I know we're going to go real quick. Yes or no? A distraction from everything else?
It's just more lunacy. It's more lunacy. I mean, there was an opinion written by the Justice Department during the George W. Bush administration that said auto pens are okay.
Auto pens are okay. All right, you hear that, Mr. Trump? Auto pens are okay. Barbara Quaid and George Conway, thank you both very, very much. Folks, coming up, the latest terrifying news coming from DOGE, with new reporting on the number of scientists and safety experts lost by that agency that manages our nuclear weapons. Stay with us.
Is that necessary? No. Neither is a long weekend. The Paycom employees do their own payroll, so you can fix problems before they become problems. Get Paycom and make the unnecessary unnecessary. See you down the line.
My husband Dean has always worried about his diabetes. He was afraid that once he reached retirement, he wouldn't be able to enjoy it. But getting Dexcom G7 has put Dean in control of his health. Wherever we go, he can easily manage his sugar levels and make sure he's staying in range. Dexcom G7 has given us confidence in the future, wherever it takes us.
Where to next? Life with ear ringing sounded like a constant train whistle I couldn't escape. Then I started taking lipoflavinoid. With 60 years of clinical experience, it's the #1 doctor-recommended brand for ear ringing. And now I'm finally free. Take back control with lipoflavinoid.
You probably know Vistaprint for business cards, because we've printed them for millions of small businesses over the past 25 years. But we also print signs, stickers, shirts, and more. If you need it, we print it. Print it all with 20% off for new customers at Vistaprint.com.
On an American Home Shield warranty, you can protect your common home systems like this. See?
Thank you.
Don't worry, be warranty.
I tried everything for my stubborn dandruff, and then I found Nizoral. Nizoral works differently to get to the root cause of dandruff. In fact, its active ingredient is 10 times more effective at fighting fungus, the primary cause of dandruff. Say goodbye to stubborn dandruff with Nizoral.
Dangerous ladders. Gutter muck? Ugh. No wonder you hate cleaning your gutters. Good thing there's Leaf Filter. Our patented filter technology keeps leaves and debris out of your gutters forever. Guaranteed. Call 833-LEAF Filter to get started and get the permanent gutter solution that ends clogs for good.
They took the time to answer all of our questions. They really put us at ease.
End clogged gutters for good. Call 833-LEAF Filter or visit leaffilter.com today.
Dupixent helps people with asthma breathe better in as little as 2 weeks. So this is better. That too. Dupixent is an add-on treatment
for specific types of moderate to severe asthma. It works for mid-tier asthma medicine to help improve lung function. Dupixent is not for sudden breathing problems and doesn't replace a rescue inhaler. It's proven to help prevent asthma attacks. Severe allergic reactions can occur. Get help right away for face, mouth, tongue, throat swelling, wheezing, or trouble breathing. Tell your doctor right away of signs of inflamed blood vessels, like rash, chest pain, worsening shortness of breath, tingling, or numbness in limbs. Tell your doctor of new or worsening joint aches and pain, or parasitic infection. Don't change or stop steroid, asthma, or other treatments without talking to your doctor. When you can get more out of your lungs, you can do more with less asthma. Isn't that better? Ask your doctor about Dupixent, the most prescribed biologic in asthma, and now approved as an add-on treatment for adults with COPD that is not well controlled, and with a specific marker of inflammation.
Small steps, like a tap, a new part of your routine, or a moment for you, can come together to make big changes for your weight loss, hair loss, anxiety, and more. Get a personalized treatment plan 100% online at forhers.com.
Behold, a branch ergonomic chair, a symbiotic companion for the working human, with 8 points of ergonomic adjustment and lumbar support, all for a price that's remarkably humane. Branch, wildly ergonomic.
It's party time! I'm talking about Jackpot Party, the leading free-to-play mobile slots game that always gives you more. More Vegas action, more casino favorites, the latest slots, and more ways to win. With Jackpot Party, you earn daily bonuses just for playing. Yes! What are you waiting for? Download Jackpot Party for free and get a 45 million coin bonus. Jackpot Party, a party in every spin.
A motions hearing today involving Doge ended without a ruling from a U.S. district judge who instead extended a temporary restraining order another 7 days to consider whether a protective injunction, which prevents a party from taking a certain type of action, should be placed on Doge officials as a way to prevent them from accessing your personal information. The lawsuits come as unions for current and former federal employees allege that the government unlawfully disclosed the personal data of millions of Americans to Doge. That closely watched hearing comes as cuts to the federal government are now endangering a top-secret national nuclear security agency home to key nuclear scientists, bomb engineers, and experts tasked with safeguarding the transport of nuclear materials. They're now facing staffing issues. How fun. Totally not frightening at all. This new reality comes as national polling among registered voters finds that, surprise, surprise, even those that want to cut back on government and its size and its spending don't like the way it's being done or the people who are doing it. Joining me now is Peter Baker, New York Times White House correspondent and MSNBC political analyst, U.S. chief columnist for the Financial Times. So, Peter, you and I have had a little bit of fun having this conversation from time to time over the last few weeks. And here we are, where we're seeing in new NBC polling a couple of things that I think are pretty striking. The first is Elon Musk's favorability. You're finding, versus Doge itself. 46% like the idea of Doge. Okay, yeah, let's cut. But then, when it comes to Elon Musk, 51% not too much a fan. How do you read what the public is saying right now?
Yeah, it's fascinating that Musk, of course, has taken on a little bit of radioactivity, but that Trump, who's responsible for all these decisions, hasn't, right? Trump's numbers in that same poll are as high as they've ever been. Not high. They're 47% approval rating, but for him, that's actually relatively high. So the public is blaming Musk and giving Trump, to some extent, a pass. This reminds me, actually, of my time in Russia. This is an old saying in Russia. The saying was called the Dobry Tsar, the kindly Tsar. If only the Tsar knew what his boyars were doing in his name, he would stop it, of course. And it's an old-fashioned thing here, too, in the United States, too, right? We obviously blame the people around a president as if a president didn't have anything to do with it. Well, he's made very clear he has authorized Musk to do what he's doing. Everything that Musk is doing is with Trump's license. But Musk has done it in a way, obviously, that's turned off a lot of the public. Yes, cutting government is not a universal goal, but a popular goal. There's a consensus there among a lot lot of people that maybe the government needs some fresh eyes, some scrutiny. But the way he's going about it with that chainsaw literally represents, something other than a mature, thoughtful, analytical approach to what works and what doesn't, especially when you're firing people at nuclear agencies, trying to hire them back, firing people at the Ebola section, hiring them back. These kinds of things don't suggest a thought-through process.
It's interesting that what Peter lays up really is reflected in other aspects of the NBC poll, which notes that 33% say Doge efforts should continue. Another 33% say they're reckless and should stop. And then a 28%, well, just slow the whole thing down. And to Peter's point, that is the point, that Trump is the ultimate beneficiary here around the very thing he wants done. But the country is divided on how it's playing out, how it's being implemented to some degree. But the guy who's doing it is more the bad guy than the guy who told him to do it.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think Peter's put his finger on it. If only the Tsar knew. I think, there is a far stronger cultish attachment to Trump and trust in Trump than there was for Elon Musk. Even though if you look at Elon Musk's popularity, approval ratings, just as an engineer, as an entrepreneur, over the last few years, he's been sky high. The kind of person until very recently that most Americans admired. So that 39% positive number is low, and I think it's going to drop. But look, we all interface with government, from local government, from DMVs up to federal government, for tax rebates and stuff. Everybody has reasons to, at least at face value, support an idea of reforming and streamlining and making government more efficient and responsive, and upgrading its digital systems. But I think as the news sort of seeps out of the Beltway, where we're all consuming this 24 hours a day, to the average American about how Musk is going about this task, the chainsaw approach as opposed to what Trump himself said should be a scalpel approach the other day, as people see the Nuclear Safety Administration losing some of its top people. These are the people who are sort of safeguarding the plutonium and the transport of nuclear materials from one place to another. The best people are the ones who go out first, the star performers. And as they see, measles spread and people who've been working on vaccines and mRNA and word, now I think that Musk 39% positive number is going to start to look really high.
Yeah, but I still get back to the point that, Musk's unpopularity is irrelevant. Peter, it's absolutely irrelevant. He is not the president of the United States. He's a guy who's in a job that has a 180-day window on it, lifespan. So he's not the one who's ultimately responsible. And I'm curious if you think, from your reporting, in light of what U.S. District Judge Deborah Boardman did today about extending the temporary restraining order another 7 days to consider further arguments, what do you see going on, or what do you think may be going on there in terms of how she's looking at this relative to all these other pieces that play out around Doge and the impact it's having on the government?
Well, what's remarkable is anybody who has time in Washington, like you do, Michael, knows that it's not easy to get things in Washington done, that there usually has to be a process. And of course, they have moved with such velocity, with such automatic, snap of the fingers. You not only are fired, you have 15 minutes to clear out your desk. That's just not the way things are done. So you have this judge saying, whoa, wait a second, hey, let's make sure the rules have been followed here. Let's make sure the process has worked the way it's supposed to, the way it has been defined by Congress under law. It's not a question of whether she likes the cuts or doesn't like the cuts. The question is whether they're being conducted according to law. You had a previous panel on George Conway talking about the president's responsibility under the oath to take care that the laws are enforced. Well, that's in fact what she is trying to do here, is trying to see if a president has followed the law they are, because they have moved with such alacrity without any notice, without any, time spent analyzing things, without anybody given a chance to respond or to offer any other views of things. The judges all over now are trying to deal with the whiplash of these orders and try to make sense of it all and see where does it fit within the law.
And we saw that play out just over the last.
Hang on, bud. Backseat. Jethro, you gotta stay back there, bud. You tried to drive forward right into a curb, dumbass. Let's try doing this in reverse. How about that? Also staying with the arts in a way. What's happening right now at Voice of America? You've got the New York Times, which has given a pretty concise history that notes that for more than 80 years, Voice of America transmitted the news into countries, many of them authoritarian, where reliable sources of information about the outside world were often hard to come by. And this was a Voice of America, if you will, that transcended the blockades and the efforts to keep information about what's happening globally and in certain parts of the world from those who needed to know. China right now is applauding this shrinkage and possible elimination of Voice of America. What do you make of this effort? Because I'm still trying to figure out, Brendan, what did Voice of America do that was so offensive to MAGA and Trump and Steve Miller and the crew that they'd have to be eliminated? If you're talking about, you know, the strength of America, why not continue to promote that?
Yeah, this is obviously a little less funny. They clearly don't believe in soft power and in the tools that we have to influence the world. Some of it is they just don't seem to care what other people think about us. Like, let's be very clear. Voice of America is American propaganda. It is. Mm-hmm. But it serves a useful purpose in the world, reaching places where they may hear very different things about America, and shaping people's views of our principles, freedom and democracy and the rule of law, are all really important things. They just don't care what happens in the rest of the world in a lot of ways. This is I think, just, you know, it's been framed as an attack on the media. I think it is much more just further entrenchment into isolationism that is going to do really long-term lasting damage, I think, to the people's view of America around the world.
Amisha, before we scoot, how do you think the American people, we were talking about some polling in the last segment, how do you think the American people is ultimately going to absorb all of this? The layering on of the firings of the federal government, the impact downstream from that, they will feel it. But then even culturally, this, to your point, noted the shift that they're trying to events. What do you take the American take will be?
Well, I think Trump splitting the zone strategy is working. There's so much happening all at once that a lot of people are confused. We've seen massive veteran firings, and I applaud the veterans who have reached an advocacy peak because a lot of that is taken off. We watched it at the Department of Ed. We watched it at NIH. We watched it at USAID. Every federal agency is up for grabs. But I think that the American people, for the most part, until they feel it at home personally, which for most people that's going to, hit probably around the summer, until we see an economic downturn that is massive, they're not as attentive to it as we are in DC.
Right.
The other thing is the right has been pushing for a very long time that DC is too slow. There's too much red tape. The bureaucracy is everything you don't want. And there are a lot of people across the country, left, right, down the middle, who actually agree with that, who think that it's really slow, who think that it's really inefficient.
Right.
He is playing towards a sentiment that has existed for quite some time. And I think that until people recognize exactly how government has helped them, particularly those with Social Security, particularly those who are on disability, particularly those who are going to need more government support as their states fall and wither because they're not getting that support anymore, they're going to have to really understand in real time what that means. And I think that awakening is going to come before you know it.
Yes. It's spring and then winter. That's how it works. Misha Cross and Brendan Buck, thank you both so much. Really appreciate it. Coming up, as Trump plans to talk to Vladimir Putin tomorrow, he's now backing away from a major campaign promise. We'll be right back.
Liberty Mutual is all she talks about since we saved hundreds by bundling our home and auto insurance.
It's pronounced Liberty. Liberty. Nice try, kid. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, liberty, liberty. Liberty.
Food is Gina's passion, but diabetes threatened to take that all away. With Dexcom G7, Gina learned how different foods affect her sugar levels in real time, so she doesn't have to choose between the foods that she loves and her health.
Asthma. Does it have you missing out on what you love, with who you love? It's time to get back out there with Fasenra. Fasenra is an add-on treatment for eosinophilic asthma that is taken once every 8 weeks and can also be taken conveniently at home. Fasenra helps prevent asthma attacks. Most patients do not have an attack in the first year. Fasenra is proven to help you breathe better so you can get back to doing day-to-day activities. Fasenra is not for sudden breathing problems. Serious allergic reactions may occur. Get help for swelling of your face, mouth, tongue, or trouble breathing. Don't stop asthma treatments without talking with your doctor. Tell your doctor if your asthma worsens or you have a parasitic infection. Headache and sore throat may occur. Get back to better breathing. Get back to what you've missed. Ask your doctor about Fasenra, the only asthma treatment taken once every 8 weeks. If you can't afford your medication, AstraZeneca may be able to help.
Nail fungus is nasty. OptiNail starts improving the appearance of fungus-damaged toenails in just 2 days.
Thank you, Jethro.
Its clinically proven formula penetrates